In this lesson, we're talking about body language. Now, body language is a big subject. There's a lot to it. You can take a whole classroom on body language. However, in this lesson, we're talking about body language in the context of a sales presentation. And even then, there's a lot of different sales presentations. You could be in a huge venue, in an auditorium, speaking to a massive group, or you could be in a one-on-one situation. Maybe it's a retail setting. Or likely it's somewhere in between. It's a classroom or a boardroom. There's a few things you should know. First of all, how to stand. Most presentations are probably done when you are standing up as the presenter. If that's the case, a couple of tips for you. First of all, it's pretty obvious. Stand straight up, chest out with your shoulders back. Have good posture. But you don't want to stand with your legs exactly together. They should be about hip width apart, but put one leg slightly in front of the other. It's just a little bit better stance. You don't look quite as stiff if you've got one leg slightly out in front of the other. And that gives you a little bit of flexibility because then you can move back on your hip, put the other leg forward. It just looks better not to be so stiff. Now, a lot of presentations aren't given while you're standing. It's true. A lot of situations you might be sitting down. I've found that a lot of times I'm in a boardroom where there's only 2 or 3 people, and it's awkward to be standing up when everybody else is sitting. Or you might be in someone's home and you've got a mother or a father. You're pitching in a home environment. You're not going to stand up at somebody's home. Sometimes in a retail setting, maybe you're giving a presentation at a desk. There's a lot of different situations where you're sitting down. I've given presentations where I've been part of a panel where there's been 2 or 3 presenters. Now, there's a couple of tips. First of all, the same thing applies. You want to have your shoulders back and your chest up, but be careful not to slouch. And this is a problem, especially if you're presenting as part of a team. Maybe it's not your turn. It's really easy to kind of slouch in a chair. Also, be careful not to put your arms on the table in front of you. Also, be careful not to cross your legs. Just keep your legs straight down. This is really a concern if you're in some countries. I was once in Asia and I crossed my legs and I was told later it was bad form. And so keep your legs straight down. Don't cross them, which can be a temptation, especially if it's a long presentation. Let's talk about hand gestures. If you've watched many of my videos, you know that I use gestures all the time. In fact, you might say I'm an over-gesturer. Here's the deal with hand gestures. What you want to do is avoid a few things. You want to avoid the clasp, clasping your hands in front of you, or even doing something what they call the steeple, going like this. You want to avoid that barrier between you and an audience. Most people don't go like this and speak, but they will clasp their hands. They'll also sometimes put their hands behind them and speak like this. And I suppose if you do it momentarily, that's okay. But the best approach with your hands is just to have them down beside you. Not in the pockets, that's bad form. But having your hands down beside you, and then you can gesture accordingly. It might seem awkward because usually in our everyday life, we don't just have our hands beside us, but it looks natural for the audience. And that way you're open to use one or both hands as you gesture. Now, using your hands to gesture, you can go big or you can go small. And you can point to people. Just remember when you point, use your whole hand to point. Don't use one finger. All of a sudden, you'll turn into a politician if you use one finger. So you can also gesture towards yourself, away from yourself. Keep your open palms is usually the best idea when using hand gestures. But do use them. You're better being an over-gesturer, using them a little bit too much, than not using them at all and just being kind of a stiff. Eye contact is a little bit like hand gestures. You're probably better with slightly too much eye contact as opposed to not enough. There's a few different things you can do here. First of all, you can pick out 2 or 3 people in the audience and just focus on their forehead. Some people choose to even pick a place in the back of the room that they're in and focus there. And that's fine. Just remember, you've got to vary it a little bit. And I think it's a good approach to usually just focus on the person you're presenting to and then vary it up a little bit. Yes, you can do it too much if you're drilling into somebody, and especially if you're not using facial expressions with your eye contact. I think that can get a bit awkward. But in most settings, if you vary your eye contact a little bit, and you can even look at your hand as part of that with the hand gesturing, you can even at times break eye contact, look at your hand, and that'll help mix it up a little bit. But too much is better than too little. If you're looking at your notes or looking down at the floor or looking at a painting in the room or something else, that's bad. Eye contact is a good thing, and having too much is not going to hurt you as much as not having enough. Let's talk about smiling. Now, smiling is important, but you've got to be a little bit careful. There are times when you want to smile during your speech, but it's usually not when you're actually giving the speech. You want to smile when you're being introduced, and you want to smile kind of during the edges when maybe somebody else is talking or something else is happening, somebody's answering a question. You don't want to sit here and ham it up and just smile as you're talking during your whole presentation. There's actually a speaker here in the United States. His name is Joel Osteen, and he is a religious and self-help speaker. And he's very good. He's very good at what he does. But he's known because he's got this huge smile on his face, and he's always hamming it up and smiling during every bit of his presentation. He's going on and on. And you know what? It works for him because of who he is and what he's known for. But it's probably not going to work for you. In a sales situation, you don't want to be smiling too much the whole speech because you're going to come across as inauthentic. You want to come across as credible and authentic and knowledgeable. And if you're just doing this the whole time, that's going too far. Likewise, keep this in mind with head nods. I'm a big fan of head nods. In fact, you don't realize how important nodding your head is until you're at a place where things are a little bit different. That happened to me when I was in India. Now, India, they have what they call kind of a halfway head nod. It's more like a head bobble. And it's not a complete yes or not a complete no. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. I was once giving a presentation in India, and this totally confused me because the guys kept going like this, and I thought they didn't understand me. I thought it was a no, so I kept repeating things. Well, it turns out this really doesn't matter if you're not in India, but it reaffirmed to me that how important your motion, your head motion is, and people pay attention a lot to the expression on your face, especially the top half of your face and the motion of your head movement. Use this to your advantage when you are asking questions or when you're going back and forth with audience members. When somebody says something, nod in the affirmative. Or that's a good point where you can smile as well when somebody else is speaking. So just remember, head nods, facial expressions, very important in terms of body language. As is the eye contact, the hand gestures we talked about, and posture when giving a presentation in front of an audience.